The Celtics schedule is out, and I think they're catching a little bit of a break. And I'm going to explain why right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your regular routine. And here, generally Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days a week during this August, September little quiet time. But this week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll do a show tomorrow. Why not? Get more reaction to the schedule. I'm sure something's going to happen. So a little bit extra here. Normally, it's a Monday through Friday podcast. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. It's free. It's fresh. And you're never going to pay for it. Wherever you get your podcast, you can find Locked On Celtics as well. You can even watch the show on YouTube. We hit this month officially 1 million views on YouTube. So thank you so much to everybody who has been watching all along the way. Really do appreciate you watching the show as well as listening to the show. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I'm heading into my 16th season covering the Celtics. It's a long time. I've also written a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, so go check that out. Today, the schedule is out. I'll spend the next 28 minutes or so talking about the schedule, the back-to-backs, the good months, the bad months. It's all right there. Today's show brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. Let's just start right away. The first thing I think, the important thing is that the Celtics have 13 back-to-backs. Now, everybody has back-to-backs, and I haven't seen what everybody else's schedules are. I'll get a closer look at that and maybe do some sort of comparison. But hey, the fact is 13 back-to-backs is about right. It's less than last year. And right away, I'm going to say that the back-to-backs are actually not bad. What I'll do is I'm going to share my screen for the people on YouTube so you can see the schedule. For those of you listening, I'll just describe it. But for those of you watching on YouTube, I'll just put the schedule up on the screen so you can follow along with me. 13 back-to-backs. And what I like about the back-to-backs is there are plenty of opportunities. We talked about the Celtics needing to rest guys and slowly ramp up this season. All right, so they step right into a back-to-back at the beginning of the season. They open up against Philly October 18th, and they go a Miami, Orlando back-to-back. But second half of that back-to-back, Orlando. Let's just skip ahead and look at these back-to-backs. November, Chicago at home, then at New York. Chicago, I don't know what Chicago is going to look like. Depends on injuries and recovery from that. New York Knicks, I'm iffy on. So that could be a mediocre. That's a mediocre second back-to-back there. And it's Boston to New York. It's not as big a deal. The following week, at home, Denver, going to Detroit. That's probably the toughest travel in the back-to-back that the Celtics are going to face this season. So that's good. Going to Detroit. It's not like they're going Boston to Miami, which is the worst. So, and then Detroit still figuring themselves out. Going to be tough. No doubt about it. They're going to be tough, but still figuring themselves out. That's not the most brutal back-to-back. So that's okay. Going along, end of November, Washington and Charlotte. Washington's not going to be great. Charlotte's going to be a middle-of-the-road team. That shouldn't be too bad. That's a home back-to-back. In December, Brooklyn and Toronto. Who knows what Brooklyn's going to be, right? Brooklyn and Toronto, that could be tough, both on the road. That kicks off, by the way, a 6-game road trip to start December. I'll talk about December a little bit more in detail later on. That ends with a Clippers-Lakers back-to-back. That's not going to be easy, but at least you're in the same city. So even that tough back-to-back, the Clippers are supposed to be good. The Lakers, who knows what they're going to be, but at least you're in the same city. That's not that bad. Going into January, at home, New Orleans, then you go to Brooklyn. Brooklyn, again, depending on what they're going to be, that could be something easy. And you're only going to New York, so not horrible. Later on, the Orlando, Miami back-to-back. You're starting against Orlando, still a team not tanking, but they won't be good. So you have an opportunity to rest guys there. The back-to-back that I think is going to be the most daunting one will be this one in February, right before the All-Star break, because the Celtics will have had 3 games in a row against Philly, Charlotte, and Memphis. So every other day, they're in an every other day kick here to start off February. They're home against Memphis. That kicks off a 3-game in 4-night stretch. Memphis at home on Sunday afternoon, go to Milwaukee, then come back home to play Detroit in the final game before the All-Star break. That Detroit game, the 15th, that is screaming at me that's going to be a 25-point blowout. That's just third game in 4 nights on a back-to-back. Detroit, it's going to be, they're feisty. The Celtics are going to be ready for that All-Star break. I feel like that's going to be a brutal game. The next back-to-back at home, New York in March, then to Cleveland. Who knows what Cleveland's going to end up being? They could be okay. New York, again, a mediocre team. Travel, not horrible. So that's doable. In March, later on, the 17th and 18th, they're on the road, not ending a 5-game road trip, but they finished that one in Sacramento. But Portland, Utah, that's not going to be an easy back-to-back. Portland, got to see what Portland's going to be like this season. They're always kind of a wild card, but as long as Dame is healthy, that's going to be dangerous. Celtics do play well in Portland. Utah, who knows what the hell Utah is going to be? Are they going to trade Donovan Mitchell? We don't know. That back-to-back is going to be tough, though. Playing in Portland, Pacific Northwest, going down to Utah, not the worst as far as mileage goes, but altitude there in Utah, that's going to be a tough back-to-back, and the Celtics would just hope that Utah is just tanking like crazy. Then they finish March on a back-to-back, Milwaukee on the road, at home against Utah. So again, if Utah is tanking, then that could be an easy one. And then in April, this interesting stretch to end April begins. It's only 4 games in April. Begins with Philly on the road, then home against Toronto, beginning a 2-game mini series against Toronto. So that will be a tough back-to-back. But I think all of these back-to-backs that I listed, are you scared of any of them? The Detroit game before the All-Star break, I'm already chalking up as a loss. I'm just like, forget it. That one is not, I'm not putting any, if they win that game, it'll be a miracle to me. But you look at the back-to-backs here, you got Orlando, New York, Detroit, Washington, and Charlotte. That Washington Charlotte back-to-back is 2 kind of middle of the road teams at best. Brooklyn, who knows? They got another one against Orlando. They got another one against Brooklyn. They've got Detroit again. That one I've already talked about. New York again. Portland, Utah. That one, if Utah's tanking, you got a couple of potential resting games there. Whole point of all of this is that as I was reading them out to you, you're probably, I would think, if you're having the similar reaction than I am, I'm like, okay, that's actually, you can rest guys, or you could minimize guys. You can say, hey, we're only going to play Tatum 25 minutes in this game, or 30 minutes in this. We're going to minimize. We're going to go deeper into the bench in these games. The back-to-backs are not daunting in this schedule. I'm not looking at oh boy, they've got to do, the Milwaukee back-to-backs are tempered by potentially, like, Utah is not going to be good. They're not planning to be good this year. So Milwaukee's tough. Utah could be a little bit of a cakewalk potentially. Milwaukee, then Detroit. And then, that if that placement wasn't where it was, that might be a little bit more of a winnable game, but hey, it's still, you don't know what Detroit's going to be. Maybe the Celtics, who knows? Who knows? I'm not holding out hope, but all of these tough games, Miami, it's always the Miami Orlando back-to-back anyway. It's a easy back-to-back to do, going down to Florida. You can almost drive that. I don't even know if they're going to fly or not, but you can almost drive that after the game, get on a bus and go. But Orlando has just not been good, and they're intriguing. They've got some talent, but they won't be good. There's opportunities to rest guys all throughout these back-to-backs. The Celtics are looking for those opportunities. They might need to rest Al Horford, and I don't feel like you need to have Al Horford in all of these games, all of these back-to-backs to win. So right there is why I think, hey, that's going to be a potentially interesting. I think that this is the Celtics catch a little bit of a break in their back-to-backs. Of course, I'm saying this in mid-August. The season could come in and Orlando could be surprising. One of those teams that's dancing on the sidelines, and, Banchero could be awesome and like instant superstar. You never know. So I say this now, and certainly this is a take that could not age all that well. But for now, I feel good about where the back-to-backs are, the opponents, and all of that stuff. So coming back, some of the more interesting games and how a couple of these months shape up, where the Celtics might hit some tough slides and all of that. That's coming up after I talk to you about driving sober. We're very much knee deep in the middle of family reunion, barbecue, cookout season. We know that when you're hanging out with some friends, you throw back a few beers, and a few becomes a few too many. Very easy for 2-3 beers to become 5-6 beers if you're hanging with some really good friends. And then when the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think about calling for a ride, and then you say, nah, I live pretty close by. I can make it home. It's not a big deal. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over, right? That's what you're thinking. And even so, what's the worst that can happen? Well, your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. Everyone knows the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. And that's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on the roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, plan ahead, get a ride. It really only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen. Why not make Locked On NBA your second listen? I host on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. It's a rotating set of hosts Monday through Friday, still doing 5 days a week on the Locked On NBA podcast. So make sure you find that podcast wherever you get Locked On Celtics. You can find Locked On NBA. It's a fun take on the league as a whole. So subscribe. Even if you just want to subscribe for me on Wednesdays, that's fine. Make it your second listen. Again, you can find it on YouTube or wherever you found Locked On Celtics. So looking at this schedule, getting back into it, I'm focused on December as an important month, and January is an important month. And kind of like last year, where December and January were pivotal for the Celtics as far as hitting bottom and starting their turnaround. This is going to be a very interesting month here where, okay, so October and November, pretty standard, I think. They have a 3-game and 4-night stretch in October, all on the road. They do, November, the games pile up. They have 3 games and 4 nights in the first week and in the second week. And then they do every other day for a few weeks there, back-to-back at the end of November. Then December comes around, and they have a weird kind of a weird early December road trip. It's not exactly just a West Coast swing. They don't just get on a plane and go out west. They start in Brooklyn and have that back-to-back Brooklyn, Toronto. Then they go to Phoenix, 2 days off. Then they play Golden State in their first rematch, quote unquote, of the NBA Finals, December 10th. Then they have a day off. They get to LA and they play the Clippers and the Lakers back-to-back at the, was it crypto.com arena? I don't know if it's still crypto, whatever. Isn't crypto collapsing? Whatever. Who knows? Anyway, it's a weird road trip to start east and then head west. Normally, you start like you go Denver, Phoenix, then you go to California and you do your Sacramento, Golden State kind of, because that's drivable. You do that trip, and no, this is so that's going to be a weird one. So for a couple of weeks, the Celtics are on the road. Then they come back and play 7 games at home, a super long homestand. The November, December slate is very overall. It feels home heavy. That okay, let's count it up in November. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 at home. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the road. Then December, after that 6-game road trip, you still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games at home. So it's a bit of a home heavy, at least finish, especially in December. Orlando twice. They have 3 of these miniseries. At the end of November, beginning of December, they play Miami twice in a row, not back to back, but twice in a row. They come back from that road trip in December. It's Orlando, Indy, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Houston, and the Clippers. That could be a potentially really important stretch there for the Celtics, where Orlando twice, you should be winning those games. Indy is a team you should beat. Minnesota is up in the air. Milwaukee is up in the air. Houston you should beat. The Clippers is up in the air. So you can split those up in the air games and win those winnable games. That could be a strong finish. Obviously, you have Milwaukee, the 5 p.m. game on Christmas Day. So November, December is a lot of home games. January, why January is so important is because January is mega road. Just pack up 2-3 suitcases and you're on the road. You're just that's a long trip. Start off January 1st, New Year's Day. You're in Denver, then OKC, Dallas, San Antonio. It's every other day. Come home for Chicago and New Orleans, then back out on the road. Brooklyn, Charlotte. That's a home and home series there on the road. Come back for a Golden State matchup, then Toronto, Orlando, Miami. That's the Florida back-to-back. So that's what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 road games in January with just 5 home games. That's tough. That's going to be a tough month. How the Celtics come out of January is going to be very telling about where they are as a team. Think about December, January is where a team should be hitting its stride. They will have had time to ramp up and really kind of pick up their pace, right? You come out of the summer, October, okay, you should be playing like 10, 11 guys, 12 guys. Philly is going to be an interesting one to start off the season. How deep in the bench do they go there? That followed by a quick 3-game road trip. That is all you're really going deep. You're playing 10, 11, 12 guys there. November, you start to get into a little bit of a grind, and it's every other day with a few back-to-backs sprinkled in. You're kind of alternating a couple games at home, couple games on the road, and you head into December. That first big road trip, that's where you're galvanizing, right? That's where you're trying to be like, this is who we are this season. We feel like we know who they're going to be. However, each team is different. Each team has a different mentality. And so this Celtics team, even with the same players, is going to have a little bit of a different mentality from last season. It's just a little bit. even if it's still defensive, there's going to be, this is a team now that understands how good they're supposed to be. This is a team that understands, like, okay, we got to build up to this. They all feel the effects of the short turnaround. December, that road trip is going to be a place where they really start to come together, because those long road trips can be tough, but they can also be that galvanizing force. You come back from that, and this is where you got to rip through the schedule. This is where the Celtics have to really, you gotta handle your business at home before you go out on that other road trip. January, you got to hit January on a real high note so you can get out with some confidence on the road in January, because you're going to be living out of suitcases all month. That All-Star break, I know for a fact, I can already tell you, in February, I'm going to be doing a story for Boston Sports Journal about the road-weary Celtics coming home and looking forward to a break. And it's going to be tough. Brooklyn, again, up in the air. Phoenix, Detroit is, as much as I say they're figuring themselves out, they are going to be tough. Philly's obviously going to be tough. Charlotte, who knows what they're going to be. Memphis is going to be really tough. Milwaukee, Detroit, that back-to-back that I've talked about. That All-Star break, that's going to be a little bit of a grind there. That's going to be a tough ending to the first portion of the season. Then you get into the All-Star break. The Celtics are going to need that break in a big, big way. So I'm really interested that December, January stretch is going to be really, really tough. I'll come back. I'll look at some of the marquee games and talk about that after I talk to you about BetOnline. Now that we've got the schedule out, you can start looking at where you want to make some of your bets. Like I said, that February 15th Detroit game might be the opportunity. I don't bet on the Celtics, but if I did, that would be, I think I would be betting heavy on Detroit there. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL, which is starting to kick into gear. NHL is coming back soon, just like basketball. You got your combat sports, esports, golf. It's all there at BetOnline, which continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, they have podcasts, they have you covered. So head on over to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device and learn about the action happening today. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Let's wrap things up here with just a couple of quick glances here at some marquee games on the schedule when they fall. Obviously, opening night at home against Philly is going to be super important. But looking ahead, you've got Denver on November 11th. Nikola Jokic coming to town. You got Cade Cunningham coming in. Detroit. I keep going back and forth about what Detroit's going to be this year. I do think they are going to be tough. This is going to be a really interesting team, and they may end up mediocre, but I think it's going to be hard to beat them. And they're going to be a fun team to watch. That would be a ticket that, if I were buying tickets, that might be a ticket that I pick up. Jokic on November 11th. You have Doncic coming in November 23rd. So the Celtics are off on Thanksgiving. You get your fill the day before. And then Miami's first visit is on November 30th. That's the beginning of the home. We get to see Rudy Gobert in Minnesota on December 23rd. Obviously, the Celtics are on Christmas against Milwaukee. The Clippers come to town on the 29th of December. Zion Williamson, January 11th. So that's going to be a fun game. That's the front end of a back-to-back. Golden State comes to town on January 19th. Get yourself ready for that game. It's a Thursday night. LeBron and the Lakers on a Saturday night game on the 28th. Then who knows what KD, whatever, Brooklyn coming to town. Is Kyrie going to be there? The first Brooklyn visit is not until February 1st. That's weird. But the Celtics go to Brooklyn, but they don't get Brooklyn doesn't come to town until February 1st. Phoenix will be a good one. Memphis, John Morant on the 12th. Oh, by the way, the Celtics do play on Martin Luther King Day. They play Charlotte on the 16th there at 1 p.m. I don't see the nationally televised game. We'll do a podcast tomorrow. We'll get into nationally televised games and all that stuff. Let's see. I think that's I'm kind of fascinated by the finish of the season. I'll finish this on this April stretch. The Celtics finish. I'll even go back into March 30th at Milwaukee, home on March 31st against Utah. 3 days off, then at Philly, home against Toronto twice, and then they finish with Atlanta. So that's 5 out of the last 6 games are against Eastern Conference competition. 3 of those are against division opponents. We could be looking at another very tight finish, and games against Milwaukee and Philly. Those could be games where first seed, second seed, third seed, that could all be still in play. We could be in another tiebreaker situation here where conference record and division record comes into play. Those 2 games against Toronto could be super meaningful. Those could be really important. So the Celtics, and who knows if they're going to care or not care, will they be in a position to care? Is that last game against Atlanta going to mean something for seeding? There's a real chance that the Celtics are playing that last stretch in April in the final weekend, heading into that final weekend, March 30th, 31st, heading into April 1st. There's a strong chance that those will all be very important, meaningful games for the Celtics. So that's going to be a fascinating one too. The Celtics head into March. I talked about January and December. That road trip, that Atlanta, at Houston, at Minnesota, Portland, Utah on a back-to-back, and Sacramento. Another weird kind of pseudo West Coast. You start down in Atlanta, you go from Georgia to Texas, up to Minnesota, across the Portland, down to Utah, over to Sacramento. That's a weird kind of ping-ponging across the country. And it's just, there's no true West Coast trip, because the other West Coast trip starts in December, where you start in Brooklyn, you go to Toronto first. So it's not like the West Coast trips that we're used to, where you kind of start at least in mountain time and go out west and work your way out west. These are weird. All of these West Coast trips start on the East Coast. It's a bizarre scheduling quirk, but that stretch there, Atlanta should be good, but we'll see. Houston should be beatable. Portland can be beatable. Utah, Sacramento is always beatable. That's going to be an important stretch. I mean, at this point, every game's important, because I'm looking at everything. Oh, this could be really meaningful here. This could be important here. But that finish to the season, I assume the league is building up the intrigue, right? Because that finish, Philly, Toronto, Atlanta, all really potentially meaningful games that could change the entire course of the playoffs. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe I'll get Tom back on. Maybe I'll get somebody else. I don't know. Probably Tom, because I'm lazy right now. It's August, and I'm like, I could probably reach out to somebody else, but I'm tired, you guys. I'm just joking. We'll find somebody. We'll talk to somebody. Again, it will probably be Tom, because it's always fun to talk to Tom. But we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of the games that we want to see and some of the things that stood out. So stick around. Much more to talk about here with the schedule. And so make sure you're subscribed. You can find out whenever the podcast drops. If there's, like I said, there's confusion it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule for August and September. So we're already through. This is mid-August. We've only got a little while to go in August. Then September. There's only a few more weeks of this 3 days a week. But if I decide to do a fourth, then if you're not subscribed, then you might miss it. So make sure you're subscribed. And this way you get it directly to your device and you'll know when I am sending you guys a podcast. So subscribe there. It's free. It's always going to be free. You'll always be able to listen to it without paying. I'm not going to have you pay money to listen to the podcast. You'll always have access to the podcast for free. And you can watch the show on YouTube. So subscribe there. If you're watching the show on YouTube, always hit that like button, ring that bell there so you can get notified when I drop new podcasts. And if you people do that, they comment right away. It's awesome. So thank you so much. Again, 1 million views on YouTube is so huge. I love the fact that we're talking about the podcast listens in terms of millions. And that's all thanks to you all for sharing the podcast. I do appreciate it. And I would love for everyone to do it more often. Share the podcast to your friends, family, everybody. They should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.